DW is a family business and started as a drum school in Santa Monica, California by our founder, Don Lombardi, and it's rooted in drum education and in drumming in the art form. My name is Scott Donnell, and I'm Vice President of Marketing for Drum Workshop. So at DW, we're fortunate enough to have someone here who's sort of been part of the evolution of the process, and his name is John Good, and the late Neil Peart coined him the Wood Whisperer for good reason. John has made finding tone woods, exotic woods, his life's passion. And so we start the process at DW with the foundation of what a great drum shell should be, and that is sustainably harvested wood, the best quality we can find. So we start the process with lumber, with wood, and we get that done at a sawmill. It's a rotary cut. It's either a 36th of an inch or a 32nd of an inch, depending on the type of wood. Usually the softer woods can be cut quite thicker. Once we have that lumber that's cut into 4x8 sheets, much like you would find at a home improvement store, but quite a bit thinner, we have to take that and cut it in a guillotine to length and width. It's a pretty labor-intensive process, and there's a lot of math there because we're always creating a seam in that drum. There's an inner, outer, and core ply of plywood, right, with all those veneers inside that shell, and they all have to line up and match up perfectly with a butt seam that is mathematically perfect because we don't want wood fillers and we don't want those sorts of things in our drum shells. So the guillotine is the beginning of that mathematical process in which everything is cut to the specific size for a shell size. Once that wood has been cut, we move along to the plywood process. These are going to be very thin plies of plywood, either 2 or 3 plies thick, and it will go into a heated plywood press. We have 2 of them, and it's about 2,800 pounds of pressure. Again, heat activated with a proprietary glue that we have mixed just for us that's sort of in the epoxy family. It hardens much more so than a wood glue, but we're able to do it at this stage because the plywood is flat. And this glue lets sound travel through it quite well. So that's a certain adhesive we use at this part of the process as opposed to when we're bending it and turning it into a cylinder. Once we have plywood, which is very thin, we have some machines we've developed, essentially 2 skill saws, which will cut this veneer to width precisely before it heads to the shell presses, in which it will be put into a specific diameter for each shell. And we have presses from 6 inches in diameter all the way to 24. It's really fascinating to watch, and I think people that come here and see how drums are made, to see how much hand work and hand labor go into this process, because as you can see, everything is rolled by hand. So they lay up the plywood veneers in a very specific way and glue the seams in a very specific way, run that core ply through the glue machine, and then we're able to put that into a shell press for about 5 to 8 minutes. And then we use a proprietary process called cool tempering. At this point, we don't necessarily need reinforcement hoops in our drums to keep them in round. It's something we do for sonic qualities, right? A drum shell we make with a reinforcement hoop, even if it's 3 plies, will offer a bit of a more focused sound. And that's the original way we made our drum shells from the beginning. We had reinforcement hoops. Between our shell technologies, the grain orientation of the wood and how we lay up those shells, and the wood types we can choose from, it's almost endless what we can do. We have purple heart, we have oak. I would say maple is still probably the most popular drum making material in the world. Birch, cherry, all these tone woods. And then you get into the softer tone woods, such as gum and poplar. And those are the sounds of vintage drum shells, right? So if you mix and match all of that soft wood, hardwood, You can make hybrid shells, you can do pure wood shells. Mix it with wood grain technology, it's a world of sound that you can't get anywhere else. From the shell shop, we move into edging and sanding. And surprisingly, there's some manual labor there as well with hand sanders, because when you're dealing with reinforcement hoops, you can't automate sanding the insides of those shells. You have to do it by hand, which isn't a terrible thing, because the folks that we have here, the craftspeople that work on our drums, are very astute at knowing where they need to refine and sand the drums in certain places and where the glue lines lie and all those things. And then we still cut bearing edges on precise routers by hand with, again, craftspeople that really have been doing it for a long time and know that process very well. From that process, the drum will also be finished in a few different ways. And oftentimes, depending on the type of finish, that happens before bearing edges, because you'll either get a laminate wrap or a hand-finished, what we call satin oil, which is no longer oil, it's actually water-based and very environmentally friendly, or a lacquer paint job. And we can get as custom as anybody would want to get with a drum shell in that way. We've made custom drums for the likes of Queen and Rush and Pink Floyd, and a lot of our drummers sort of like a very personalized look on their tour kits, and we're happy to work with them on that. And Louis Garcia is the artist, which makes that all come to life. And we're really proud to have Louis as part of our team. Once that's done and it's got its top coat, right, and that shell is completely lacquered, it goes to drilling, and it gets the CNC signature of where those lugs will go, air vents, badges, and we have these really elaborate multiple drilling machines that allow us to do that in such a precise way. From there, it's heading to assembly, where you really do see the drums take shape and look a certain way. And that is getting hardware and heads. And we have 5 different hardware color options that we have standard, which is chrome, satin chrome. We have black nickel, nickel, and gold. And drummers don't often do this either, but you can mix and match all of those as well, and be as custom as you'd like to be. So, between the hardware colors that are available, the finishes that are available, drummers really can create something that reflects their personalities and the style of music they play. So you can sort of watch this process take shape, and this is the really exciting part of when it becomes, a drum set. And you see that sort of happen at the end of the assembly line as it moves to tuning. And important to note that DW is really specific about assembling everything we produce here in California, and everything gets tuned before it goes into a box. And finally, it heads to an area after it's tuned we affectionately call the White House, and that's just basically a white area with lots of light for the last level of QC, cleaning, checking, making sure that instrument is as, perfect and up to our standards as we like it to be. And then because we don't stock anything here for custom drums, that thing goes right into a box, that instrument goes right out the door and into a truck and to the lucky owner who purchased it. So it's a process that we're always improving on, but we feel like we're at a really good place right now.